Hi, so I wanted to share this text message with you guys. I got a text message from Taylor Swift, and she really wanted a geometric, artsy, cool, balanced design for her backdrop for her concert in Des Moines. And I thought that was awesome, and I thought you guys would be perfect to create something like that. And I wasn't sure exactly what she wanted, so I went ahead and had her send me an email. Okay, so Taylor Swift didn't really text me, but we're going to go ahead and pretend like we are working on an awesome design project where we're making a backdrop for something for Taylor Swift's concert, or maybe for an entire wall at your school or in your home. So this is an image that I thought was really cool. This is a geometric design piece. And what I want you to go ahead and do is pause the video and just notice what you see. Just make some observations. What are the shapes you see? What are the colors and patterns you see? How is it laid out? And then go ahead and press play and return to the video. Okay, so what I saw when I first looked at this image was triangles. So you can see, to me, this is two triangles stacked on top of each other, but it's also one whole image, like split triangles. So if you saw it as one shape, you see the shape again here smaller, it's a quadrilateral. It has four sides if you see it that way. Or maybe you saw this piece sticking out at the bottom and you're like, that looks like a parallelogram maybe. But what I noticed is if you see it as triangles, then you'll notice like this top is shaded one color, like a peach color, and the bottom is shaded a gray. Or you'll see, like with this big one, that there's pink on top and then a pattern on the bottom. I noticed all the other bigger ones have patterns on the bottom too, to balance out the image. So let's just keep this in mind and think about what we might want to create. Okay, so before we get started creating our own design, I've talked a little bit about balance. And balance as a principle of design is the feeling of equality in art. We see this all the time because it's pleasing to us. It's part of what makes things beautiful. And so you can see on the scale, there's 5 circles right here, and then one large circle, but the scale is perfectly balanced because it's the same weight. These 5 circles would fit inside of this one circle. And so it's balanced. That's kind of what we're going to go for with our design, but we're going to be using triangles. So take a look at these 2 triangles. You can see there's shaded parts. This first triangle, the shaded part is right here. The second triangle, the shaded part is right here at the bottom. I want you to go ahead and pause the video. Take a moment just to yourself to think about what you notice, what's different about the whole triangles, and what's different or the same about the small triangles inside. Anything that you notice, any observation that you have, and then I want you to discuss it with your partner. When you're ready, go ahead and hit play. I'm going to share my thinking with you. You may have noticed these things. You may have noticed something completely different. There's no right or wrong answer here. We're simply just making observations. What I noticed is that the first triangle is split up into parts in a different way than the second triangle right here. What you may have also noticed or wondered was, is this triangle the same as this triangle right here? I'm referring to these shaded parts, the tiny triangles inside of the large whole triangles. My intuition or my gut feeling told me that this first triangle inside of this whole triangle was not the same size as this shaded triangle here. But one of the ways I could figure that out for sure was to go ahead and count the parts, because I can see that these 2 triangles are the same, these 2 whole triangles. So they're partitioned differently, and that would help me figure out if they were the same size. And if they were the same size, we could say that they were equivalent. equal or balanced. So let's take a look. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so 1 out of the 4 parts in this triangle right here is shaded. And then when I take a look at the first triangle, I can see that it's split up into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parts. So 4 parts and 6 parts. And of course we see that one part in this whole triangle, one of these smaller triangles inside of the triangle is shaded. So 1 out of 6. Okay, so 1/6 of the first triangle and 1/4 of the second triangle. I want you just to make some observations. Don't focus too hard on the fraction. What does that mean? Does that mean that these are balanced or not? Go ahead and pause the video and talk to your partner. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my thinking with you. My thoughts were, if we had to break down this first triangle right here into 6 parts, that those triangles would have to be smaller than the triangles we broke down into 4 parts, because we would have more to work with. So my question is, what would we have to fill in on each of the whole triangles to make them balanced or equivalent, equal? We don't need them to look exactly the same. What we're trying to do is make each triangle have the same amount shaded. So what could we do? Go ahead and pause the video and talk to your partner. So there are several different ways to do this. This is just how I thought about it. Since this triangle right here was 4 parts, it was easy for me to think in my head, if I'm going to shade half of this, then I would need to shade 2 parts, because I know that half of 4 is 2, 2 plus 2 is 4. That made sense to me. So if I shaded in this triangle, this piece right here, out of my whole triangle, and this second piece right here is already shaded, then I have shaded in half of this whole triangle. So when I'm looking at the first triangle and I'm trying to make it balanced and equivalent to my second triangle, then I know that I need to shade half of that as well. So if we just want to look at it, the easiest thing to do is I can see just right down the middle here, that would be half of my whole triangle. So I'm going to go ahead and shade that in. So this is getting a little bit messy here, but I think we can see. Okay, so I'm going to shade in this second piece and my third piece. So now I have 3 of my 6 parts shaded, and then on my second triangle I have 2 of my 4 parts shaded, and then we also know that that's half. This is half, and so it's represented differently. We see that there's different triangles inside of our whole triangles, but we can balance them the same. They don't look exactly the same, but they're balanced. And there's different ways to do this too. Instead of shading this top triangle here in my second triangle, I could have come down and shaded this triangle right here and left this one open. Same thing with this one. I could have done for 3 different parts. Obviously this one's left shaded. Then I could have shaded this triangle, and then I could have shaded this one, and that would have been 3 parts. And those would have been balanced as well, because we have half of the triangle shaded, or 3 of 6 parts. And then in my second triangle, I would still have 2 of my smaller triangles inside of my large triangle shaded, 2 out of 4 parts, or half of my triangle. Okay, so now that we've worked a little bit with recognizing patterns within shapes or within images, we are going to create our own art piece. You are going to be given 3 triangles, and your task is to make them all balanced or equivalent. So the same amount in each whole triangle will be shaded. That doesn't mean that we want them to look exactly the same. In fact, we want to make sure that each of these 3 triangles are different. The only thing that they have in common is that each of these triangles will be the same size. So you're working with the same space, the same area within them. And then 2, we're going to make sure that the part that we shade or put pattern in or texture, you can design this however you'd like. We're going to make sure that the same amount is going to be filled in on each of the 3 triangles. So your first choice will be to make all 3 triangles have half shaded or filled in or with design. And so you're going to be able to do that in a bunch of different ways by finding different triangles within the 3 large triangles. So you're going to want to represent half in each of those 3 triangles in a different way by designing it differently. Your second choice is to do 1/6. So if you choose 1/6, each of your 3 triangles will have 1/6 of the triangles shaded in or filled with patterns or texture, however you want to design your piece. And then your last choice is going to be 3/16. So again, that'll mean that each of your 3 triangles will represent 3/16. All right, let's get started. I'm excited to see what you all create.